This year has truly been about learning to read my knitting. Hello and welcome to Make a Little. My name is Taylor and I am a Seattle-based fiber artist on a quest to make a little art every day. And today I have some very exciting news. I finished the planet sweater, or well, kinda. So I have finished all of the knitting on the planet sweater. If you're familiar with this pattern, then you know that you actually omit the motifs from the sleeves while you're knitting in the round, and then you go back and duplicate stitch them on. So I am at the stage where I basically just need to put the finishing touches on this sweater. Because it's also bottom up and then connected as a raglan, there are also these armpit holes that I need to sew up. But also I made a small error when connecting up raglan stitches right here. So there's like this little gap that I would like to fix that I think I should also sort of be able to fix right around the same time that I sew up these armpits. Now I do have some experience with duplicate stitching. I've done like one-off stitches every now and again, especially if I've screwed up a pattern and I just want it to look a little nicer, but I've never done like a true duplicate stitch motif. And I don't have the best spatial awareness, to be perfectly honest, so that's like my most nerve-wracking component of it. Like, it's making sure that all of the stitches line up together and like are accurate relative to one another. I also think that this year has truly been about learning to read my knitting. And so I'm not sure if prior to this I really had the skills to really dive into this sort of spatial duplicate stitching. I have looked up a bunch of tutorials for duplicate stitching, both in video and written form, and I think I've settled on a couple that have really helped me figure out how this works. But we are going to try to get these motifs on the sleeve. Also, very exciting update, it does fit. I will put some pictures in of me wearing it. I also have a feeling it's going to block like pretty significantly, which I would really prefer. Right now, I would say the fit is good, but it's not quite oversized, which was sort of what I was hoping for. Like I've mentioned in the past, I do really prefer an oversized fit, but even if it were to not grow at all, I really love the fit of it right now. So that makes me so happy because, again, if you've been following along, you know that I have had a lot of issues with sizing, specifically with Laura Dalgaard's patterns, and specifically with the planet sweater. This is, I believe, the 4th time that I have knit this sweater, but this is the first time I have ever truly finished the entirety of it. Usually I would end up trying it on right about the time we got to these stripes, and it just wouldn't fit. In fact, I'll see if I can collect up like all of the iterations that I've had of this sweater. But after purchasing the kit, receiving the kit for Christmas this last year, I have finally done it. So I am so excited to put these motifs on. Let's dive in. Okay, so I kind of moved and manipulated the sleeve until it lined up as perfectly as I can make it with the raglan increases. So I have like a flat plane. I counted these stitches across and it was 20. I know my motif is 11 stitches. So I marked out the boundaries with these orange stitch markers, and basically there are 11 stitches in between these two. Then I also marked out where the motif begins and ends. So I know that it starts 2 from the top of this stripe here. So this is going to be the first stitch of the motif at its highest point. And then this is going to be the bottom right here on this row. So in theory, I think this has kind of mapped out my area of where the motif is going to be. In theory. Again, I've never done this before, so I'm really hoping that this works. It was really nice for this to be kind of my first duplicate stitch project because of how bulky it is. I think the bulkiness makes it much easier to read your knitting, so it's much easier for me to count stitches on this than something that would be like fingering weight, for example. I am 4 stitches in and already having some issues. So what I realize I keep doing is I keep wanting to go into the bottom of the wrong stitch here. I always want to do it the one below. Luckily, it's pretty easy to back myself back out of here once I realize I'm not in the right stitch. But I appear to be going into one too low. I think in order to kind of help myself here, I'm going to try to remember that I'm basically going to go into the stitch that's parallel to the stitch I previously made, assuming I want to make a straight line, which is what I'm trying to do here. So instead of going into the bottom here, which seems like it should be the bottom, I actually think I go into the bottom of this stitch here. I also, it is important to remember you are knitting a sleeve here, so the fact that I have to go in through the tube is a little bit irritating, but that is okay. I think I'm getting the hang of it. And right now I have the bottom of my N. I am also wondering why my stitches keep tightening it up pretty tight as I'm duplicate stitching, but I'm hoping that kind of as I keep going, that will mellow out a little bit. I have officially gotten one letter done, the letter N. So this was definitely some trial and error on my part. You can see there are definitely like these little pieces of pink in here that kind of poke through. I think what that is just sort of like a sloppiness of me actually hitting the middle of the stitch. This yarn is super splitty. It's like kind of a roving quality. So I will just, you can see I was kind of able to correct it by the very end of the chart. So I'm okay with it showing through for the end because this motif is dark green, pink, and light green. So I think it will look kind of intentional. But yeah, this took a lot longer than I thought it was going to, honestly. I have 7 more of this size of motifs to do, and some of them are a little more complicated than this one. The other thing that helped me, I mean, maybe if you've done this before, you know exactly what to do, but the other thing that helped me was remembering to truly trace the stitch. So I kept wanting to go into the loops of the V that were actually the stitch below where I was, where you actually, in order to complete the V, you need to put your yarn in up above, so the stitch above the one that you're actually doing. But I think I definitely got more the hang of it here, and so I guess we're just gonna have to start doing the other letters. So I took a little break from this project, both for knitting reasons and for non-knitting reasons. I definitely did not cast on an entire other project. I would never do that, but yeah, it's been slow going. So let me show you how much double knitting, or how much duplicate stitch we have actually gotten done. So I'm still on the first sleeve. As you can see, we have the little smiley face O and the N, and then only a bit of the kind of like yin and yang symbol O. You know, it's actually not that challenging to duplicate stitch, but I think that the roving makes it trickier. So this yarn is almost like a roving, like it's not particularly, it's very splitty. And what I realized keeps happening, you can see it I think quite a bit in this sort of yin yang symbol, is that I can get under the majority of the stitch of the color, but not the entirety of it every once in a while. And so it leads to these like occasional little occlusions of the color underneath. To be perfectly honest, I don't hate the effect, at least not enough to like really spend like agonizing minutes over doing each one of these stitches. But I am actively working to try to make my stitches a little more even to hopefully reduce some of that effect. I have a couple of other duplicate stitch projects kind of in the back of my head that I'd really love to do, and one of them is going to be on a black DK weight sweater vest, I guess, that's definitely not this project that I did not cast on at all. And I am a little less concerned about doing it on that because I think it's going to be much easier to get the entirety of that thread underneath my needle. So we are just going to sit back and do a little bit more of work on this one. I really would love to get at least the moon portion of the motif done today, but we will see how much is possible. I just finished work. It's like 5:30, 5:45 p.m. right now, and I just want to unwind a little bit, and I think that some sort of a very specific task here is going to help with that. So let's get duplicate stitching. And with that, I have officially finished the duplicate stitching on this sweater. I definitely hit a flow state with this, and I think this S, which was the last letter I did, is by far my absolute best. I'm gonna put in a little bit of footage of my very last row because I think that really illustrates what I was able to finally kind of work out as I was doing this. To be perfectly honest, I'm somebody that likes researching. In my day job, I'm extremely type A, but for whatever reason, that really doesn't come naturally to me in creative spaces. I think I get a lot more out of things by just like jumping in and doing them. And it's funny in a lot of ways. I think because I didn't know what I didn't know, I didn't have the ability to be as like intimidated or nervous about this as I probably should have been given this particular set of circumstances. So let me talk a little bit about what makes the duplicate stitching on this piece a little more challenging. So first of all, the duplicate stitching all exists on the sleeves. And as you can tell, the sleeves taper from the top to the cuffs. That means that the fabric is quite curved and there are increases in the fabric. So it can be really challenging to see like where your dead middle is on the sleeve. It also means there's a slight bend to your rows. So when you're looking at certain spaces when you're duplicate stitching, you can kind of get confused and think maybe you're supposed to be knitting into or you're supposed to be stitching into the stitch above or below just based on how the lines curve. I think in the last year, I've really gotten significantly better at reading my knitting, and I think that was really, really helpful for having this task go a lot smoother. So the pattern recommends that you do the duplicate stitching at the very end, so post blocking, post weaving in ends. Personally, I did not. I do still need to block this sweater. And there's a couple of reasons that I chose to not do it the way that the pattern is written. The first is that I saw a lot of guidance when I was looking into duplicate stitching about doing it prior to blocking, because obviously when you're duplicate stitching, it makes this fabric significantly thicker and can kind of lead to some inconsistencies that can in fact be blocked out, or at least that's what I've seen, right? We'll see whether or not this one works. The other reason that I did not weave in my ends prior to doing the duplicate stitching is that because of the construction of this piece, like I mentioned, there actually are these holes in the underarm. I've stitched them up now, but there are these holes, and that made like the motifs right up top of the sleeves so much easier, because you do have to work from the back of the fabric pretty often. And so I could actually work just through that hole instead of like the second motif was almost always the hardest one, because I had to flip the sleeve up to make sure that I could access this space and still go underneath the fabric. But as you'll see in that last row, I did kind of find a way to do it without needing to fully pull my entire needle through the back of the fabric. So I did find by the end that I finally got the hang of, which is like if you kind of get into a flow, you can sort of knit through the stitch that you'll or the bottom of the V that you will duplicate in your next stitch directly after finishing your first. And if you do that, I think it leads to a much smoother looking duplicate stitch, but also means that you don't have to be so finicky with the back of fabric. Like if this was a flat portion or flat piece of knitting, I think that duplicate stitching it would be like a complete breeze. But because it is in the round, it was a little finicky for me at first. But all in all, I am really, really excited about how this is going to finally look. Again, I do need to block it and weave in the ends, but I won't be able to do that in this video because I'm actually leaving town in just a couple of days as of this filming. But I can report that it does fit. I will put in some footage of me wearing it so you can see it kind of in all its glory. And honestly, I completely love this piece. I just really, really love it. I think that it is so graphic and bold and colorful, and I'm not even completely sure what it's referencing. It sort of feels like a little bit like 1950s retro futurism, but there's something very distinctly 80s in it as well, and that's just right up my alley. So I had a really, really fun time knitting this up. The other reason that the duplicate stitching was kind of challenging on this project is that the kit includes this kind of like roving yarn. You can see it's extra bulky. You can actually just like completely pull it apart, as you can see. And the designer actually suggests that you like felt your ends instead of like weaving them in. And oh man, that was really tricky to get a needle through without just like splitting this yarn over and over and over again. So there are definitely some inconsistencies in my duplicate stitching, but overall, I am really, really happy with this piece. I have a really intense amount of yarn left over from this kit, like so much that I'm almost a little bewildered by it. I don't know if that's because my tension is particularly tight, or if they maybe just like make sure you have enough for the size up if you want. Now that I mention it, you might actually buy this kit in like groups of sizes as opposed to a single size. I'm not totally sure because my mom bought it for me, but if, for example, this kit could, I would believe this kit could probably accommodate a size 3 or 4 as well, just with how much yarn I have left over. So leave a comment. What do you think I should do with it? I was kind of thinking it could be sort of fun to make like a balaclava looking space helmet. But I don't know, I'm open to suggestions. Let me know what you think I should do. I also think this yarn would be amazing for like those very trendy felted slippers right now, because this yarn is like primo felting. And if you've been following this channel, you know that I don't use a lot of bulky yarn, so this might be a little bit of a struggle, but I love the colors, so we'll see what happens. With all of that, I'm gonna call the video here. Thank you all so much for watching. I always really appreciate you being here. If you're interested in seeing more of me or my art, I would absolutely love it if you would consider subscribing. And if you liked this particular video, please leave it a like and leave me a comment down below. I love seeing your comments and I love interacting with you guys. And it just means the absolute world to me. But with all of that, I hope you have a great day or a great evening or wherever you may be, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!